Extreme ideologies put into place are dangerous for our society. Defunding the police and taking power away from the police is an extreme ideology that has been put into place in New York State. And I didn't learn how dangerous this left-wing extremism was until I moved to the state of New York. I lived there for 2 years. Once bail reform was put into place, once police powers were taken away, and I lived in a climate that felt like semi-anarchy. I moved to New York State with my children because New York has amazing benefits. If your income in your household, for example, is less than $120,000, New York State offers free government-funded tuition for families, for students in a family less than $120,000 to receive a 4-year bachelor's degree. Also, abortion care is instantly accessible. If you're a woman and you don't want to have a baby and something happens, you can go to Planned Parenthood, have an abortion, all within a few days. However, your safety is at risk in New York because police have had their powers taken away. Police don't have power to arrest people and put them in jail for committing crimes since the Bail Reform Act. And I learned as time went on that my safety and my children's safety comes before free tuition, comes before the off chance I might need an abortion or anyone. I learned that my safety is at risk. I am more likely to be victim of a crime such as robbery, breaking and entering, vandalism, such as harassment, without there being any repercussions for the perpetrator in the state of New York. My likelihood of being victim of a crime is higher, and my safety outweighed the benefits New York has to offer. And New York has amazing liberal socialist programs for people, like healthcare, some parts, I don't want to get into healthcare right now, but like, for example, if you're a lower income family, or if you're a person who doesn't have proper identification, you can just walk into a clinic and be treated free of charge, and New York State will cover any medical emergencies. And that's an awesome benefit of living in New York, but your safety is at risk. So I felt safer moving to a swing state like Pennsylvania, where police have power, where people who commit crimes go to jail, and where your safety is less at risk. Okay, the college funding programs are much weaker in Pennsylvania than New York. And I don't really know much about women's reproductive rights in Pennsylvania. I would assume they're similar to New York, but I haven't researched it. And all I know is that when I was living in New York State, it felt like I was living in an extreme dystopian reality where people can get away with committing crimes on a daily basis, whether I'm the victim, my neighbor is the victim, or my children are the victims, and there is zero consequence for those actions. I'm sorry, if they're caught, if the police feel they have power to investigate, when I tell you, not even a picture of the person's face caught on a surveillance camera is enough for police to have the power to go after them in the state of New York. If by the off chance police have enough evidence to go after someone and pursue charges, unless the perpetrator has committed a violent, atrocious crime, they're just given an appearance ticket and they're free to go. It's like a transaction. Police in New York have lost their powers, and that's why I say when you choose one extreme ideology to put into place under a government, whether it's a state government or the government of an entire nation, that is dangerous. Our society is not evolved to live without police powers. We need police to keep us safe if we become victim of a crime. And I had experience in Pennsylvania where police went after the perpetrator within a short span of like 2 weeks. And New York, it took 2 years of repeatedly like, help. And I remember one time I called 911 and I was put on hold while I was living in New York. So it's like, I don't know what the problem is in New York, but I know that I didn't feel safe. And I know that living in Pennsylvania here in the swing state where police still have their powers, I feel safe. And if you think that defunding police or taking away their powers is going to fix everything, it's not. I would argue that marginalized groups of people are safer in a swing state like Pennsylvania, where police still have their power, than they are in New York. Because, for example, if a person who belongs to a marginalized, oppressed group of people is victim of a hate crime, the police in New York literally can't arrest them. They can't detain them. They can't even go after them without enough evidence. The police don't have powers. But in a state like Pennsylvania, where police still have authority and powers, if a person who is part of an oppressed group of people is victim of a hate crime, the police can go after them and arrest them and detain them. There isn't a bail reform to the degree in the New York state, in the state of New York. So a lot of people are having like, they're tone deaf when I'm trying to be rational here and talk about this. And the only thing that makes sense to me when they're being tone deaf is that they never lived through what it's like living in a high crime area in the state of New York. It's fucking dangerous. And I might make some more videos after this, but it's only fair that I discuss living under a right-wing extremist ideology. It's just as scary. So New York State, left-wing extremist ideology. Let's think of a state with a right-wing extremist ideology. And I'm not even going to give an example of a state, but just imagine a state that has banned abortion and is prosecuting women who have had miscarriages. That's also a dystopian nightmare, which is why I feel safest living in a swing state where it's like 50-50. And I'd argue that Pittsburgh is more liberal than the entire state of Pennsylvania, obviously with the exception of Philadelphia. And it's good because there's balance. And you can live in a liberal community where police still have powers that haven't been stripped from them. So if you think that stripping police from their powers and making bail reform and introducing bail reform is going to make you safe, I disagree. Police exist to keep you safe. And so if you think that some states with maybe less standards to become a police officer, because if you look at the statistics, if there's police corruption or blah, 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 anything along those lines, the people who want to defund the police, think of it this way: set higher standards to become a police officer in those states. Don't strip them from their powers and defund them. Set limits, require a bachelor's degree to become an officer, or require an associate's degree and internship field time before they become a police officer. So, like, you can't just take away police powers in an unevolved society that's dangerous. And at the same time, taking away women's reproductive rights in a state that is living under a right-wing extreme ideology is dangerous. They're both dangerous in my eyes because I have lived through it, and that's all I have to say. I can follow up and share more ideas later in another video, but a lot of people just don't know it until they experience it, until they're victims of a crime in the state of New York, and nothing can be done about it. Like, it's absolute, it feels like anarchy.